So from there, you went on to meet Travis. How did you meet him?
I met Travis out of the nightclub on Sunset. I forgot what it was called. It was over at the Sunset Marquee, not Sky Bar, but it was this other little bar. Mm-hmm. And my girlfriend liked one of his bandmates, and I didn't know who Blink-182 was in any capacity. So I just remember going in, and back then he had a mohawk, and I know lots of people wear mohawks now, but back then they did not. And he had lots of tattoos, and Oscar was pretty clean cut, and so was Dennis. Mm-hmm. They were pretty clean cut guys, no tattoos, things like that. And I just remember my girlfriend, was talking to his bandmate, and I was like, and they were like, "Oh, he's in the middle of getting a divorce," and I was like, "Ooh, I don't want to be involved with a guy who's in the middle of a divorce." I was like, I'm single. I'm feeling finally in a really good place after Dennis and Oscar. And, but I was like, I'll be your wingman. I'll hang out with, I'll be your wing girl. And I just remember being like, kind of like, holy shit. He has like this mohawk and tattoos and neck tattoos. And I was like, whoa. But we just like, I remember we just talked, and we just like, it was like the same thing like with Oscar. It was like kismet. And I knew I was going to marry him. I knew I was going to have like his children, and I knew it was going to be a very epic sort of relationship.
Wow. So what is he like as a person? Is he affectionate? Is he like just as affectionate as we see these days with you?
Yeah. I mean, sorry, I'm getting comfortable. Yeah, he's very affectionate. He's a very, very romantic man. I mean, obviously you can see that even in his newfound relationship. He's very romantic. He's a big gift giver. He's very loving, and he's very funny. I don't think a lot of people see that kind of side of him. He's actually a very, very funny guy, because he comes across normally very quiet when he's out and around people, but when you're close to him, he's a very funny guy.
Right. So you guys ended up having 2 children together, correct?
Yes.
And how?
We have Landon, 19, and Alabama, who's 17.
Amazing names. And so how was he as a dad?
He's a great dad. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a great dad. We've had our ups and downs co-parenting through the years as well. I think co-parenting in general is just a very difficult thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and how did you guys finally break up? How long were you together?
We were married for 4 years, but we still stayed together for like another 4 years, kind of off and on, living together, trying to co-parent, together. Just a difficult time.
Right. So talk to me about his plane crash for a second. Where were you when you heard about it?
Oh, God. We were actually working on things, and I was in our home, and Alabama was actually in the bed with me, and the other kids were sleeping. And he called me, and he was about to get on the private jet, and he was just really nervous. And he was saying, this jet isn't like the other jet. This was actually the last gig he was doing after a very long tour. And I just said, honey, just get on the jet, like get home, and then we can just enjoy our time together, and we can just focus on the family and just be together. And he was like, yeah, I don't know about this one though. It's really small. I have a bad feeling. And I was like, we didn't like flying in general. So we always kind of had a bad feeling, and he was, they had taken a vote about DJ AM had a gig in LA, and some of his other friends wanted to get home as well. So they took a vote, to get on the jet. They kind of needed all of them to pool in to get the jet. And I just remember being in bed, and it was like 15 minutes later, but it felt like an hour. I don't know how to explain it. And the phone rang. And actually before the phone rang, my daughter sat up, Alabama, and I remember her going, Mommy, where's little Chris? And little Chris was his assistant who was on the plane. And I remember her going, Mommy, where's little Chris? And I was like, little Chris is with Daddy, honey. Like, go back to sleep. Like, it's okay. Go back to sleep. And then about 15 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was a deputy. And he was like, is Shanna Moakler there? And I said, yes. And he goes, ma'am, there's been a terrible accident. There's been a plane crash. And I thought they were joking. And I was like, ha, 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 guys. Like, I thought it was Travis and the guys joking. And I was like, this isn't funny. I don't think that's funny. Like, and the guy was like, no, ma'am, I'm being serious. There's been a terrible accident. And I just was like, this isn't a joke. Like, you don't joke about stuff like that. And the man was like, ma'am, this is Deputy so-and-so from the North Carolina Police Department. There. And right when he said that, I heard Travis screaming in the background, like blood curdling, screaming cries. And, like, I'm on fire. And he goes, we need to airlift him. And, we need you to, we're going to airlift. We're taking him to, I believe it was Georgia. They were taking him from North Carolina to Georgia. He didn't end up getting airlifted. He didn't want to get on another aircraft. They ended up driving him to Georgia. And I just hung up the phone and I called his father, and I don't even think, I was hysterically crying. And I remember him telling me, I could hear on the phone him saying, little Chris didn't make it. Little Chris didn't make it. And that night, they brought little Chris's wife over to the house, and I had to tell her that little Chris didn't make it. And then his manager and I get on a plane like at 5 a.m, like the first plane out to Georgia to go see him. It was a pretty horrific experience.
And I think 4 people ended up dying in that plane crash, correct?
Yes, little Chris, his assistant Che, his security Che, and the 2 pilots, a man and a woman.
And it was
actually the older pilot's last flight.
Oh, wow. And they ended up saying what, it was a tire that popped? Did they ever figure out what? A tire
popped, yeah. And I think between the pilots, one was trying to take off and one was trying to land. So there was this sort of up, down kind of like thing. And then they went across like a highway and into an embankment.
Wow. So obviously that affected Travis deeply. I mean, he didn't want to get on a plane for many years after. How did you help him out of, how did you get him home from the hospital?
Gosh, well, we were in the hospital in Georgia for about a month, and then we took a tour bus home. We had 2 guys drive night and day to get him home with a nurse on the bus. And then we got him to the Grossman Burn Center here in Los Angeles, where he was there for another 2 months. And he had probably over like 17 surgeries through that time. We ended up getting back together, but eventually ended up decided to break up down the road from there.
Right. And DJAM also was injured, but not as badly, right?
Yeah, DJAM was, probably in the hospital for like a day or 2. He just kind of walked away with like some cuts and bruises. It was pretty crazy. The difference is when the plane was on fire, Travis opened the plane door with his hand, so burnt his hand. And then what they thought was a wing was actually the jet engine. So AM sort of had his shoes on and jumped down, where Travis jumped on and slid down and so burnt.
Oh, wow.
And got the jet fuel on him.
Wow. So did that make the relationship closer, or did they not want to talk about it at all and they went their separate ways? Do you know what happened there?
I don't really know. I mean, that's something that I guess, they would really have to speak on. I mean, I guess my personal opinion or take as an outsider is I think AM, carried a lot of guilt because he was the one that wanted that, wanted to get home for this gig. And I think, obviously not having such severe injuries and seeing Travis kind of go through the severity of his injuries in the hospital was probably I don't see how any human being couldn't carry some serious amounts of remorse or guilt. Mm-hmm. I think that was very, very difficult for him to see.
Right.
But I don't think Travis blamed him. I think Travis still clearly 1000% loved him and never wanted him to feel that way. But I just think as a human being, we would naturally feel that way. But, he definitely wanted to still be there and support him for, and have that friendship for sure.
Right.
I mean, that's a thing. They were the only 2 survivors, so, I mean, that has to bring you close.
Right. And then were you around when DJAM lost his life? Did you?
I was, yeah.
And what was that like for Travis and you?
We were actually visiting my parents in Rhode Island. My children were visiting their grandparents, and Travis was on tour, and he got the call, and we just sat and cried. We just sat and cried. It was just a devastating blow, and that was the one person that he had, who lived through that horrific experience, who could understand the totality of it. And I think to lose that person and possibly think, we lost him in a way because he felt, bad about it or something was, it was just devastating for everybody. And DJ AM was such a loved soul, and he's so loved and he's so respected. And, there's just such a community of people who just love him so much. So it was just a loss for a large group of people in LA.
Yeah. Yeah. It was horrible to hear about his drug overdose. So eventually you and Travis finally cut it off and end the relationship. And then were you okay co-parenting after that for a while?
We did. I mean, we did. We tried our best. That's one thing we did do. But, I don't have lots of fond memories anymore. I used to try to glorify it and say, but, looking back, I feel like, it was a lot of in and out of court. It was a lot of, headbutting. And I really just don't have too many great things to say about it.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Or anything positive now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I know you don't want to dwell too much on your ex, but if anyone's ex was in the news for dating somebody as famous as a Kardashian, it's in your face all the time. People are obviously putting it in your face. Was that hard to hear about them, or you already knew this in the background that they were dating, Travis and Courtney?
I had a sense that they were dating, and I've gotten so bullied in the media, and since this relationship ensued, I mean, really treated unfairly and unjustly, and so bullied in the media that to me, it just has put a really bad taste in my mouth.
But why? Because you've been vocal about not being a fan of theirs, or just because you're the ex?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Not being a fan, just if I made any statement whatsoever, I was just called bitter and jealous. I don't even know Travis Barker anymore. We haven't been together for, since almost 2010, 12. And I don't even know him. I don't know what his favorite movie is. I don't know what his favorite food or color is. We're not together. I have been in my own relationship. So there's besides the fact that we only have our 17-year-olds, who will be 18 this year, and then our work is done here, and we never have to see each other or talk to each other ever again. And I look forward to that day.
Right. Okay. I understand that.